Hawksmere. Doesn't it look radiant when it's being slowly strangled? You see, my darlings, tyranny has learned a new trick. It no longer arrives with torches and trumpets. No, how gauche. These days it comes bearing bread still warm from the oven, roofs neatly mended, ledgers balanced to the penny, and smiles so polite they practically curtsy. And oh, how the people sigh with relief, how they thank their saviors, how quickly hunger teaches loyalty. But allow me to lean in, just a breath closer, because this is where it gets deliciously obscene. The Syndicate did not conquer Hawksmere. They improved it. They fed it until resistance felt rude. They repaired it until defiance felt irresponsible. They wrapped the valley in gold-threaded generosity and waited for gratitude to do what fear never could. After all, why raise a sword when your enemy has already paid for your dinner? And poor Hawksmere. It never noticed the rope, not when it shimmered like a necklace, not when it tightened just enough to be mistaken for an embrace. This chapter, my sweet conspirators, is about that moment. The moment when survival begins to look like surrender, when conscience is quietly auctioned off in the name of progress, and when even heroes begin to sound inconvenient. So pour yourself something indulgent. Listen carefully, because the most dangerous traps are the ones that thank you for stepping inside.
Chapter 5. A Gilded Noose. The golden autumn that should have crowned Hawksmere's hard-won peace instead draped the valley in a shroud of borrowed finery. The Syndicate's largesse was not merely delivered, it was performed, a continuous theater of benevolence, designed to rewrite memory itself. Within a fortnight, the physical transformation was undeniable, and therein lay the trap's exquisite craftsmanship. The surface bloom. The granary, so recently echoing with hollow despair, now bulged with sacks of wheat, rye, and barley. Salted pork and herring filled the brine barrels. Iron tools, not the battered, repaired relics of before, but gleaming pneumatics, saws, and plowshares, lay in orderly ranks in the refurbished smithy. 2 sturdy dray horses and a milk cow with a frolicking calf grazed in the lower pasture. Master Gilded's survey team, with crisp efficiency, had repaired the worst of the siege damage to the outer wall, using a fast-setting mortar that smelled of limestone and alchemy. To the people, it was nothing short of miraculous deliverance. The hollow-cheeked children filled out. Laughter, timid at first, then more robust, returned to the courtyard. The relentless anxiety that had gripped the community for months eased into a wary gratitude. When Syndicate carpenters arrived unasked to re-roof the leaky chapel, Father Clement stood watching, his hands clasped so tightly his fingers blanched, caught between earthly relief and spiritual dread. Alienor observed it all from the battlements, a cold knot tightening in her stomach. This was not aid, it was anesthetic. Each full belly, each mended fence, each cheerful greeting to a Syndicate worker was a thread in the gilded net settling over them. The Syndicate was making itself indispensable, weaving its presence into the very fabric of daily survival. To resist them now would not be defiance. It would be ingratitude, madness, a rejection of the prosperity they had literally brought to the table. Tom stood beside her, his ledger open, but his eyes on the same scene. The accounts are perfect, he said, his voice thick with disgust. Every nail, every sack of oats, meticulously recorded. They've even paid a fair market rent for the meadow they've occupied. We are in the black for the first time in years. We are profitable tenants on our own land. And debt is a quieter master than any army, Alienor murmured. An army you can hate. Debt, especially when it looks like salvation, you feel obligated to. Below, she saw Bess distributing medicine from a new, well-stocked chest to a queue of villagers. The chest bore a small, discreet emblem, the interlocked gear and droplet. The kindness was branded, the keeper's isolation. For Eamon, The gilded noose was of a different design. His authority as master of terrain was scrupulously, flawlessly respected. Master Gilda submitted her drilling proposals each dawn in triplicate. She listened to his rulings with polite, professional attention. She never argued, only noted his decisions in her logbook with a neat, precise hand. But the pressure was constant and insidious. It was in the sheer volume of proposals, each one a feint, a test, a data point. It was in the technical language that flowed around him like a river, threatening to drown his instinctual understanding. It was in the quiet disappointment of the survey team when he vetoed a promising site, a disappointment that somehow morphed into gossip in the yard. Master Thorne is cautious to a fault. The Syndicate's machines could find wealth that would secure Hawksmere for generations, if only he'd let them. He was becoming a paradox, the revered hero who was now the obstacle to a brighter future. The people loved him still, but their love was tinged with a confused curiosity. Why delay the prosperity that was finally within reach? His only solace was the land itself. At night, he would slip away to the edges of Thorne's Hollow, avoiding the now permanently lit survey pavilion. He would press his hands to the cold earth, feeling the slow, deep pulse of the viridian essence. It was restless. The subtle, harmonic probes of the Syndicate's equipment, the tympanum they were beginning to assemble, were like the buzzing of gnats to a slumbering giant, an irritant in a deep dream. One such night, he felt a new vibration. Not the land's, but a crude, jarring shock through the bedrock. He rose and moved silently through the woods toward the source, the rocky slope he'd directed Gilda to drill, the site of the Hollow Heart. He found the team packing up under lantern light. The drill, a complex percussion device of brass and steel, stood idle. Master Gilda stood over the core samples, her usually impassive face lit by a fierce satisfaction. "Master Thorne," she said without looking up, "your intuition was correct. A karstic void at 32 feet. The core samples above it show fascinating mineral accretion." She held up a cylinder of stone. Veined through the gray rock were filaments of a strange metallic blue. "Cobalt? A rare silicate? This is new data. This validates the combined approach, your experiential guidance targeting our methodological investigation." She smiled at him, and it was the most threatening thing she'd done yet. She was co-opting his knowledge, framing his resistance as partnership. Eamon looked at the blue veins. They felt cold, dead, like a scar. "The heart is hollow because something left it," he said quietly. "You've drilled into a grave." Gilda's smile didn't falter. "All geology is a record of endings and beginnings. A grave is just an archive." She nodded to her team. "Catalog everything. We'll present our findings to Syndicate Central. This proves the value of systematic exploration." As Eamon walked back, the isolation pressed in on him like the walls of a deep mine. He was playing his part too well. He was giving them exactly what they wanted. A map, drawn in the negative space of his denials. The crack in the foundation. The true breach, when it came, was not through stone, but through spirit. Father Clement had become a ghost haunting his own chapel. The new linen on the altar, so blindingly white, felt like an accusation. The sack of lime for plaster sat in the corner like a harbinger of false purity. The syndicate clerk's words echoed in his mind. The order believes in harnessing God's creation for the betterment of mankind. Is not stewardship a form of piety? One afternoon, overwhelmed by a crisis of conscience, he sought out Alienor. He found her in the solar, reviewing the flawless, hateful syndicate provisioning lists. "My lady," he began, his voice trembling, I must speak of the soul of this place." Alienor set down her quill, her full attention on the tortured priest. "Speak, Father." "We have accepted their bounty. We have broken bread bought with their coin. Their menders heal our sick. Where does righteous defiance end and sinful ingratitude begin?" The words tumbled out. They speak of progress, of harnessing the land's bounty for all. Is our clinging to old ways, to mystery and fear, a form of pride? Are we in our struggle, denying God's children the fruits of his creation? Alienor felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. This was the noose tightening around their collective will. The syndicate wasn't just buying compliance. It was buying guilt, eroding the moral certainty that had been their bedrock. "Father," she said, choosing her words with the care of a surgeon probing a wound. "Do you remember the green fire? Do you remember what it felt like? Not as destruction, but as presence?" Clement flinched, crossing himself instinctively. "I remember it as judgment, a power beyond us." "It was a power of this place," Alienor insisted, "a power they now seek to dissect on a table like one of Dr. Fry's specimens. They don't want to honor creation. They want to own the blueprint. They don't seek fruits. They seek to own the tree, the soil, and the very sun that feeds it. Gratitude for a meal does not oblige us to hand over our souls. But if their way brings peace, food, safety..." Clement's eyes were pleading. He wanted her to absolve him, to make the conflict simple again. "The peace of the tomb is still peace, Father," Alienor said softly. "The safety of the cage is still safety. Eamon Thorne died for a hollow in the earth. My husband died defending a line on a map. This is the same war, fought with prettier weapons. Do not let the gilding on the noose fool you into thinking it's a necklace." Cleft looked shattered, caught between two irreconcilable truths. He left without another word. His faith, once a pillar, now reduced to rubble. Alienor knew the Syndicate had scored a victory more damaging than any drill bit. They had infected the conscience of their moral center. The whisper becomes a voice. The listening device in Eamon's wall had borne silent fruit for the Factor's agent. He heard Eamon's muttered frustrations to himself, his fragmented notes about pressure points and dreaming stone. He heard the weariness, but the agent was patient. His task was not just to gather information, but to identify the moment of vulnerability. That moment arrived with Will. The young man, earnest and desperate to be of worth, took his role as runner between keep and survey camp with grave seriousness. He was also acutely aware of the subtle tension between Eamon, his hero, and Master Gilda, who treated him with a respect he'd never known from his former noble masters. One evening, delivering a late slate of amendments, he found Eamon alone in the gatehouse, staring at a map riddled with denied sites. "Master Eamon," Will ventured, is it true what they say? That there's a fortune in silver under the old oak copse?" Eamon looked up, his gray eyes tired. "Who says that, Will?" "Some of the survey lads. They were talking at their supper. They said their resonator thing hums like a beehive there. They said you won't let them dig because of old stories." Will's tone wasn't accusatory, just confused. Eamon sighed, the sound heavy in the small room. "The stories are the memory of the land, Will. The hum they hear. That's not silver. That's a heartbeat. You don't cut into a heart to see what makes it beat." Will frowned, struggling to reconcile the pragmatic world of measurements and yields with Eamon's poetic truth. "But if it's so powerful, couldn't we use it? For us? Not for them, I mean. But if it's here and it's ours..." It was the same seductive logic infecting the whole valley. If it's there, why not use it? "Some fires," Eamon said slowly, "aren't meant to be put in a lantern. They're meant to burn where they are, to keep the whole world warm in ways we don't even see." The conversation was reported verbatim that night via a coded drop in a hollow tree outside the walls. It revealed two crucial things: Eamon's deep metaphorical framework for the essence, and his growing isolation, even from loyal hearts like Will's. The boardroom adjusts. In Kingston upon Hull, the reports from Hawksmere were analyzed with clinical interest. "The psychological pacification is ahead of schedule," the Factor reported to Lady Constance in vain. "Dependency is established. The priest's crisis is a predictable erosion of ideological resistance. The population's loyalty to Thorne is now conditional on his delivering prosperity, which he cannot do without ceding to our methods." "And Thorne himself?" Vane asked. "Straining. He is a bridge between two worlds, and the abutments are crumbling. He uses metaphor to understand the phenomena. This is a weakness. Metaphor is imprecise. We can use his own poetry against him." Lady Constance tapped a freshly received dispatch from Fry. "The doctor is elated. The core samples from the hollow heart have confirmed a new mineral. He's calling it azure resonite. It appears to be a crystalline byproduct of the essence interacting with certain strata over millennia. It has unique conductive properties. More importantly, Thorne's successful guidance to the site proves the model. His intuition can be used as a dowsing rod for our science. Then we increase the gradient, Vane said. We force the metaphor to confront the ledger. Gilded will present the Phase 1 tympanum proposal for full deployment. We frame it not as exploitation, but as a listening ear to better understand and protect the valley from unstable emissions, playing directly to his role as protector. We make his veto seem like a dereliction of duty. And if he vetoes it, Lady Constance asked? Then, the factor said softly, we have the Mowbray instrument ready. A whispered campaign begins, that the master of terrain, traumatized by his father's death, is irrationally stifling progress, endangering the valley with his superstition. We corrode his authority from within. The gilded noose tightens by the consent of the very necks it will hang. The strategy was set. The mechanism would advance, using the keeper's own strength as the lever to break him. The tympanum proposal. Master Gilder requested a formal meeting in the Great Hall, inviting not just Alienor and Eamon, but Tom, Father Clement, and a few of the senior household. It was a masterstroke of transparency, designed to apply public rational pressure. She unrolled her schematic before the fire. It showed a network of 12 sites across the valley, each marked with a symbol of a stylized ear. The tympanum array, she announced, her voice confident and clear. Based on our collaborative surveys with Master Thorne, we have identified key harmonic nodes. At each site, we will install a passive resonator, a chamber of tuned crystals and brass sunk into a borehole. Its sole purpose is to monitor the subtlest vibrations in the bedrock. She pointed to a chart showing theoretical wave patterns. The event that shattered Lord Roland's army was a catastrophic release of pent-up geo-etheric stress. The tympanum will give us an early warning system. It will allow us to understand these pressures, to vent them safely in controlled amounts before they build to another disaster. It is, in essence, a stewardship tool. It protects Hawksmere by listening to its whispers. The proposal was brilliant. It reframed the Syndicate's intrusive science as a protective necessity. It used Eamon's own language of listening and whispers. It made his role as master of terrain the very justification for the array. All eyes turned to Eamon. The hall was silent. Alienor watched him, her heart pounding. She saw the trap. To refuse was to reject a system that promised to prevent another green inferno, a disaster every soul in the room feared. To accept was to let them plant their listening devices in the land's most sensitive places, to complete their map. Eamon studied the schematic. His face was unreadable stone. He walked to the map, his eyes tracing the proposed sites. They were, as he'd feared, a perfect negative imprint of his vetoes, the calm spaces between the heartbeats, which would precisely triangulate the heartbeats themselves. Your logic is sound, he said finally, his voice rough. The room seemed to lean in. But you listen for the wrong thing. You listen for stress, for fracture, for the symptom. The land doesn't speak in warnings of its own sickness. It speaks in health, in balance. Your machines will hear only the silence before the scream, not the song that keeps the scream at bay. Gilda remained poised. With respect, Master Thorne, we must monitor what we can measure. A song cannot be quantified. A stress harmonic can. Our duty is to prevent another cataclysm. Can you, with your methods, guarantee the valley's safety? It was the public direct challenge. Guarantee it, or step aside. Eamon looked at the hopeful, anxious faces in the hall. Will, Bess, old farmers who had lost sons to Roland's siege. They feared the green fire more than any syndicate ledger. He saw the desperate hope in their eyes. Let the clever machines protect us. I cannot guarantee what the land will do if it is provoked, Eamon said, his gaze locking with Gilda's. But I can tell you this. Your resonators will not just listen. They will itch, like a splinter in a wound. They will change the song they are trying to hear. You call it a tympanum, an ear. But an ear pressed too close to a heart can become a parasite. The poetic warning hung in the air, but against Gilda's clean engineering, it sounded like mystical obstinance. He saw the doubt cloud the faces of his people. Tom, ever the pragmatist, cleared his throat. Is there a compromise? Fewer sites? A trial? Gilda smiled, a thin victory already in her eyes. We can begin with a primary array of 4, the most critical nodes for triangulation. Here, 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 and here. Her finger landed on the edge of Thorne's Hollow, a mile from the carved clearing. A limited reversible installation. We prove its safety and value. Eamon knew it was a foot in the door. Once the first resonators were in, humming their subtle alien frequency into the stone, the rest would follow. He looked at Alienor. Her face was pale but set. She gave him the faintest nod. They were out of room to maneuver. One site, Eamon ground out. The one farthest from the village, for 1 month. You monitor it. We monitor you. And you share every scrap of data with me, not summaries, the raw numbers. Gilda considered, then nodded. Agreed. The Northwest Ridge site. We begin tomorrow. This is a prudent step for everyone's safety. The meeting dissolved. The people left, talking in low, relieved voices. The Syndicate had offered protection, and their keeper, after some poetic fuss, had agreed. The narrative was shifting. The Noose tightens. That night, in the privacy of the solar, the true cost was counted. We just let them plant a seed of their machine in the heart of our land, Len growled, having remained silent with immense difficulty during the meeting. We let them plant 1 seed instead of 12, Alienor corrected wearily. We bought a month of watching them, learning their methods. And in that month, Tom said, staring into the fire, they will feed another 100 meals, fix another 12 roofs, and prove to every soul here that their magic is safe and useful. Eamon, can you actually learn anything from their raw numbers? Eamon, leaning against the mantel, looked exhausted. I can learn what they are listening for. I can learn the shape of their ignorance. It's something. It's not enough, Father Clement whispered from the corner. He had been a silent, brooding presence. We are justifying each step as it comes. We are losing the reason for the fight. We are becoming managers of our own surrender. The truth of his words silenced them all. The gilded noose was not just around their necks. They were now being asked to admire the craftsmanship of the rope. Alienor felt a terrifying hollow opening beneath her feet. The gambit had been to buy time, but time was not neutral. It was working for the Syndicate, eroding their will, complicating their morality, turning their people into grateful subjects. She thought of the listening device in Eamon's wall, its presence still unknown to them. She thought of the branded medicine chest, the perfect accounts, the respectful, relentless pressure. They were not fighting an enemy. They were being digested by a system. We need a new move, she said, her voice barely audible. Not a defense, not a delay, an offense. We need to understand not just what they're doing here, but why. What is the Crimson mechanism for? What does Lady Constance and Dr. Fry truly want with the heart of our world? She looked around at her council, their faces etched with fatigue and doubt. We need to look beyond the valley. We need to find a crack in their foundation. It was a desperate shift in strategy, from defending their hill to striking at the enemy's citadel. But as the ghost of a plan began to form in her mind, a risky journey, a search for allies within the Syndicate's own domain, she knew the gilded noose had left them no other choice. To remain still was to be trust completely. They had to move, even if it meant stepping into the unknown and possibly pulling the knot tighter in the process.
And there it is, the knot pulled just a fraction tighter. No screams, no riots, no grand betrayal that can be named aloud. Just a valley nodding along, a council rationalizing itself into paralysis, and a people learning, ever so gently, that resistance is exhausting, and compliance comes with fresh linens. How elegant. Eamon Thorne still stands, of course. Oh, he stands beautifully. But notice how alone he's become. A keeper surrounded by listeners who no longer hear the same song. A guardian whose wisdom is being translated, footnoted, and quietly repurposed by people who intend to outlive him. Metaphor, my dears, is a lovely thing, until someone turns it into a data set. And Alienor, sharp, perceptive Alienor, even she now speaks the language of margins and months, buying time, managing loss, choosing the least catastrophic surrender. That is how systems win, not by crushing their enemies, but by converting them into administrators of their own defeat. The Syndicate doesn't need chains, it has ledgers. It doesn't need faith, it has frameworks. And it doesn't need violence, because gratitude does the work far more quietly. But take comfort, my perceptive listeners. A noose this intricate always has a flaw. Somewhere in the weave, a strand is fraying. Somewhere beyond Hawksmere's borders, someone knows too much, or wants too much, or has already paid a terrible price for believing the Syndicate's promises. And when the hunted stop defending their ground and start studying the hunter, oh, that's when things become interesting. Sleep well, my darlings. The rope is gleaming, the air is thinning, and the mechanism is just beginning to hum.